I want to continue talking about a strange example that I was talking about last time at the very end. And this is sort of a paradoxical example of what can happen when you ask people about their opinions about something. The example that I was discussing looked like this. And I will try to remind us what all of this is supposed to mean. Whoa, sorry. Nope, it was like this. So a chart like this, remember, means that the numbers across the top represent voters. So in this election, there were apparently 9 total voters, and the first 3 of them voted in this way. They liked, they're deciding between 3 options, and the first 3 people, they liked A the best, and then B, and then C the worst. And these 3 in the middle, they like B the best, and then C, and then A was the worst. And then these 3 over here, they like C the best, A in the middle, and B the worst. All right, and last time we were trying to talk about how would you try to make sense of these opinions all taken together. And we realized, first of all, there's some kind of symmetry here in that, like, A, B, and C, they all appear on top an equal amount of times. And in fact, they all appear in the middle an equal amount of times too, and they all appear on the bottom an equal amount of times. So from that point of view, it seems to be like a 3-way tie here. But if you look very closely about, if I just look at 2 candidates at once, so if I just look at, looking only at A versus B, the people in the first column like A better, the people in the second column like B better, and the people in the third column like A better. So actually that would be 6 people total who like A more than B, and only 3 who like B more than A. All right? You have to kind of look carefully at this, but looking at only at A versus B, 6 prefer A above B, but only 3 prefer B above A. All right, and so overall, on the whole, these people, they actually like A better than B, like on taking them all together. Together, they like A more than B, all right? This is what we decided last time. And then you can also compare, like there I was just talking about A versus B, but I can compare the others in pairs also. I could compare, let's say, B versus C. And if you look at that, only looking at B's and C's here, if I temporarily ignore the A's, what I see is these people and these people like B more than C. These people like C more than B. And so again, I have 6 people, that is these 3 and these 3, that like B more, and these only 3 people like C more. So I can say also together they like B more than C. All right, that's because if I look at the chart and I ignore the A's, there are more people who have B above C than there are people with C above B. All right, and also if I look at A's and C's, also they like C more than A. If you look here, C is above A here and also here. So those 6 people like C more, whereas this is the only 3 people like A more than C. All right, and so these people taken all together, they like A more than B. They also like B more than C, and they also like C more than A. And this right here is some kind of nonsense. This actually, if you think about it for a moment, doesn't really make any sense at all. These are people who would say A is better than B, and B is better than C, and C is also better than A. Like an ordinary person would never have this kind of opinion because it doesn't make any sense. All right, this is sort of a circular. So I would say the group has some kind of circular preferences, which in real life doesn't make any sense. Ordinary people do not behave in this way. Sensible, logical people do not behave in this way. All right. Even though, like this chart that we started with, there's nothing illogical about this. Like these people who are casting their votes in this way are behaving perfectly normally for ordinary people to behave. So there's a big sort of moral of this story. The moral is individual preferences may be logical, but group preferences I put that in quotes, sometimes aren't, are not logical. All right? As a sort of my conclusion, sort of as a mathematician, as someone who is interested in saying things that make logical sense, I would just say there's no such thing as a group preference in the ordinary sense, that we think ordinary people can have preferences. That's true. But a group of people, often if you try to think about what their preference is, it doesn't even make any logical sense at all. All right? So group preferences sometimes are not logical. I want to use a little fancy word here. This is another aspect of what I was trying to say last time about how, like I said, I'm not trying to be like a democracy skeptic here, because I actually I think voting works. I think voting is a good way to structure society. But just the idea that we can ask everybody their opinions and somehow come up with a group preference, that doesn't really make a lot of sense. I mean, sometimes it could. If everybody happens to agree, then it's fine. But in many cases, you cannot get any kind of logical, sensible outcome by trying to group together different people's preferences. Here's some fancy language about this, is individual preferences are, here's a fancy word for this, are called, what the mathematicians call transitive. This is a property, this is a word probably you've heard in a mathematical context. There's like the transitivity property. Does anybody remember what this is? Does that sound familiar to anybody? I don't expect you to remember, but the transitivity property is usually used for the equal sign. It says something like, if A equal B and B equals C, then, anyone remember this? What's the conclusion? Yeah?
C equals A.
Then, yeah, I was going to say A equals C. If you have one thing equals another thing and the other thing equals some other thing, then the first thing is the same as the last thing, right? This is called the transitive property of the equal sign. It's also true, though, more importantly for what I'm saying, it's also true for the inequalities. So this means if A is greater than B, which we could think of as like A is better than B, and B is better than C, then automatically A is better than C, all right? This is how ordinary people think about things. If I like one thing more than something else, and I like that other thing more than another thing, then the first thing I must like more than the last thing, all right? This is ordinary. This is what I mean when I say individual preferences are transitive. If I like A better than B and also B better than C, then automatically that means I like A better than C, all right? But as we saw in this silly example up here, these people, if you try to consider them all together, they like A better than B and B better than C and C better than A. That's backwards from the transitivity. So individual preferences are transitive, but group preferences can be non-transitive. And this is the sort of logically inconsistent thing about group preferences. Group preferences can be non-transitive. That is, it's possible for a group to say, yeah, I like A better than B and B better than C and also C better than A, which to an individual doesn't make any sense. To a group, that can happen, though. All right? This concept here, individual preferences are transitive. You might have... I meant to sort of write those things together. How about that? I wrote them together. Individual preferences are transitive, but group preferences can be non-transitive. This concept has a name. This is not something, I mean, this has been known about for a long time. This is referred to as the Condorsay Paradox. This that second word there, Condorsay, is a person's name. This is a French name. Condorsay was sort of a French philosopher, mathematician, political thinker, I think in the 1700s sometime. And Condorsay was one of the first of the kind of European intellectuals to think seriously about voting in a logical, mathematical way. And Condorsay realized that sometimes if you take a bunch of transitive preferences, you try to put them all together, you will end up with something which is not transitive.
What does that say?
Condorsay is a person's name.
Oh, okay.
Condorsay Paradox. All right. Yes. So this is, if anyone asks you, when you're talking to your friends about this class, I'm sure you talk to your friends about this class all the time, and they say, "What's so interesting about voting? Why would anybody what is there even to say about voting?" And you say, "Well, did you know that even though individual people have transitive preferences, when you put them all together, sometimes the preferences of the group are non-transitive. You will blow your friends' minds." This is what's interesting. It is interesting if you know what all those words mean. Your friends may not want to talk to you anymore if you say things like that to them. That's all right. Those aren't your real friends, right? Anyway, this, one reaction to learning a fact like this is to just say, well, I guess the whole concept of voting is bogus then. Like, what's even the point of trying to gauge the preferences of a group if it's possible that the group preferences don't make any logical sense? The opinion of most people who study this is this doesn't mean that voting is a whole bunch of nonsense. It just means that voting may still be the best thing that we have to do. So our goal is not to do voting in a perfect way, because really it can't be perfect. Our goal is to kind of do voting in the best way possible. So our big questions that we're going to be talking about over the next couple weeks as we're talking about this is what are some different ways we can choose winners for preference-based elections? Like if I ask everybody, as I did last time, ask you all about your opinions about something, how am I even going to put all of those together and come up with a result? All right? What are the different ways that we can choose the winner based on a bunch of preferences, if you all tell me your preferences? And then the second question, important question, is which of these ways are better? Which way is the best? Now, I already kind of said, actually, there's no perfect best system, because the thing we're trying to do in some cases doesn't even make any logical sense at all. So all we're going to do is which way is the best, or really more likely we're going to decide which are better or worse. Really, there isn't one that's sort of the absolute best. But there are certain things that you can say about this way of doing it is better in certain ways and worse in certain other ways. So these are the big questions that we're going to be looking at for the next few weeks about these voting systems. All right? Any questions about where we're going with this? I want to get down to some real details today. All right, let's do it. So I have a big example here that I'm going to hand out. And this example, I want to come back to every so often. So please keep this paper and bring it back. I suppose if you don't, it's not a huge deal, but we are going to revisit this example every so often over the next few weeks. What you see here is an election with 37 voters, and they are just, this is a made-up example, they're just doing A's, B's, C's, and D's. All right. I hope everybody got one. So what you see sort of at the top of the page, taking up most of the page, is just this big chart of everybody's ballot. Each person, you see they have made a first a choice for the first place, second place, third place, and fourth place. So first place is the person they like the best. Fourth place is the person they like the least. Those individual ballots are not very interesting to look at. So what I've done is I have compiled these ballots all into a chart at the bottom. And actually the chart is the only thing that matters. That says, so I'm going to just write down this chart here. That's what matters. 14 people said they like A the best, then B, then C, then D. That's what the chart means. 14 people like A the best, and then B is their second choice. Once you see the chart at the bottom, there's no point in looking at the individual ballots anymore. Okay, next, 10 people like C the best, and then B, then D, then A. Next, 8 people like D the best, and then C, and then B, and then A. Then I see 4 people like B the best, and then D and C and A. And 1 person likes C the best, D, then B, then A. All right, that's the chart that you see at the bottom. And like I said, there are 37 total voters here. Right? And if you were to add those numbers across the top, it adds up to 37. Okay? Just looking at the results here, maybe we could, maybe somebody could say, do you have a feeling about who should be the winner here? A, somebody said. Why? I don't know who said it. Why should A be the winner? Oh, nobody wants to own up to it now. Yeah?
He gets first place the most amount of time.
Yeah, A has the most votes in first place, so it makes sense that A would be the winner, right? This is not a trick question, really. A has the most first place votes. I agree. Can I say the most first place rankings? Right? A has 14. B has, actually, can we just be very specific about this? This is all fairly obvious, I know. But if I were to count up just the first place, A got 14, right? B has, how many people put B in the first position? 4. What about C? Yeah, this is very slightly tricky. C has 11 people putting them in the top position. I see 10 here, but also this one here. All right, so C has a total of 11 first place votes. This is not hard, but you have to make sure when you're looking at the chart here, I am considering all the columns at once. And these people like C the best, that's 10 of them, and this person also likes C the best, that's 1 more. Okay, and then D only appears at the top right here, which is 8. All right. And so by this measurement, A should be the winner because they have the most first place rankings.
Does it not matter that it was like last for all the others?
Yeah, this is something interesting and maybe why, I don't know, some of you were hesitant to say A should be the winner. If you look at this, A is actually in last place on everybody else's ballot. This is a little striking. And if I were to say, would you agree with me if I said A is on top of 14 people, but they are last for 23 people, right? If there's 37 people total. So that means that actually there's far more people who think that A is the worst than there are that think that A is the best. Okay, so A has the most first place rankings. But
Be C.
can I just say maybe A shouldn't win? Just because so many people, actually a majority of the voters think that A is the worst, right? And so from that point of view, you shouldn't make A the winner in that situation, right? Maybe A shouldn't win because a majority thinks that A is the worst. Well, if not A, then who are you going to go with? I mean, I don't know. What I'm trying to get across is actually there is not really a single obvious way to look at a chart like this and decide who the winner should be, right? There are several different methods, and that's what I was saying when I was asking these questions. What are different ways we can choose winners for preference-based elections, all right? So there are several different ways that you could imagine doing this, and you might get different answers as you do it. But let's talk about we're going to talk about several different methods that you can use to choose a winner in a situation like this. And the first one is where you just go by the first place votes. All right, this is a very simple way to do it. Now, it doesn't always give a great answer, but at least it's easy to do. All right, this is called, so I will say this is our first method. Baby's first voting method is called the plurality system. The plurality system. I believe this is the first checkbox on our big list of topics also. So, and if I may say so, one of the easiest of the whole list. The plurality system is very easy to do. This is how you choose the winner based on just the first place ranking. So the plurality system is the winner is whoever is ranked first place the most often. This person is called the plurality winner. Because we're going to be talking about several different ways to do it, we have to have sort of words to describe. In this example that we're talking about, A is the winner if you use the plurality system. Or you could say A is the plurality winner. Yeah?
So then the fact that A, for example, would be for all the other 23 people on the last place wouldn't matter?
That doesn't matter at all if you are using the plurality system. Now, if you think that should matter in the real world, then you can try to invent another system in which it does matter. But for the, our first method is a very simple one in which you don't care about anything except for the first place votes. And that's called the plurality system. All right. So in our example on the paper, can I just copy this here? The one on the paper. In here, A is the plurality winner. All right? It just means that A has more first place votes than anybody else did. All right? Can I just, a little bit of terminology here? Plurality means more than anybody else, right? A got 14 votes in first place, and that's more than anybody else got. It sounds similar, but it means something different from the word majority. So the word majority means more than half, 50% plus one. So majority means more than half, all right? There's a difference between plurality versus majority. In this example, A does have a plurality of first place votes, but they do not have the majority. Majority in this example, there were 37 people, and so to get a majority means that more than half of the people, which I guess I wasn't prepared to do this math. Would that be 17? There were 37? You would need 19 people to make a majority in that case, right? And you only have 14 for A here. So majority means more than half. So A, in this particular example, A gets a plurality of first place votes. And that's enough to win, but not a majority. Not a majority. Come on now. All right. And this is typically how elections work in the United States, at least. We do most elections basically according to the plurality system because we don't even ask people what their large-scale opinions are. We just ask everybody, who's your top choice? Everybody votes for their top choice. You count them all up, and whoever got the most is the winner. And in our actual elections, usually the winner does not get a majority. Usually they get a plurality, but not a majority. That's if you look at like percentages for people voting for the president, for example. It happens often that nobody breaks 50%. That's because a lot of people are voting for sort of oddball third-party candidates. And so when you add up all the votes, everybody's below 50. It's like the winner is at 49 and the loser is at 47 or something. And that doesn't add up to 100% because a bunch of people voted for some other people. All right. Plurality does not mean the same thing as majority. All right. Sorry, I'm mixed up. Okay. What I would like to do is I also have, so another example. What I'm about to hand out is the results of our little class election that we did last time. This is just the chart. Now the chart in this case is pretty big because there were many different ways that you could have voted, and hardly any of you voted in exactly the same way. That's all right. Mhm. All right, so I would like to look at this one. Also, this example we're going to come back and revisit every so often. So keep that paper also. I'll try to bring extras, but it's better if most of you keep that paper. I have that chart right here. So these are the votes. So remember, this was about what's the best food. The C was cheese. The M was maple syrup. The P was pineapple. And the W was watermelon. All right. You can see here many people voted in many different ways. Most of these columns have ones on them. That means most of you voted in a certain way and nobody else voted exactly the same. That's just because there were many different choices that you could have made here. Anyway, I would like to decide who was the winner here if we use the plurality system. So who wins using plurality? That means you count up only the first place votes. What do you think? Cheese, she says. Yeah, can I actually, I didn't work this out before. Here's how I would do it if I wanted to, show my work or something. I have to add up or count up how many times each of these people is in the top position. Did you have a question?
No, I think that watermelon also have the same amount.
Oh, you think it's a tie? Yeah, it might be a tie, right? This class is, in real life, political elections, you never really have a tie just because there's so many voters. But anyway, let's see. The cheese is on top all throughout here. That's one. I have to count up. How many times is it on top? You should be adding those numbers up. So this, just to make sure everybody knows what I'm doing here. 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1. I'm not always going to write it out, but just for the sake of being totally clear, I'm adding up all the numbers that have C on the top. This is 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right? And I just have to compare this number with all the others. So the M is only 2. This was a great disappointment to me. I love the maple syrup. I actually realized after printing this out that I didn't vote. I didn't include my vote. My vote, I got to count for something, right? I would have put maple syrup on the top. P has 1, 1, 2, 1, and 2. So that adds up to 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 plus 2. This is 4, 5, 6, 7, right? And the W is 1 and 2 and 3 and 2. I think that's also 8. I said last time, you should always show your work when you're doing problems like this. In class, usually I am going to write stuff out in much more detail than I would expect. I would expect that you could add these up in your head, so you don't have to feel like you have to write out all of that amount of detail. So anyway, using plurality, the results are C and W tied. All right? Cheese and watermelon. Not great together, but individually, pretty good, I guess. I think I've had a watermelon salad with those mozzarella balls in it. It's pretty good.
My dad keeps telling me that M&Ms and Skittles are great together,
All right.
but I've never actually tried it.
Yeah, that doesn't sound great to me, but. All right. Anyway, this is how you do the plurality system. If I show you an example and say find the winner using the plurality system, this is what it looks like. In my opinion, not very complicated, not really hard. All right. As we saw in that other example, I'm going to go back to my other thing here. As we saw here, there are some times, just looking at the votes, where actually the decision made by the plurality system, there's some reasons why maybe that's not a great choice to choose the winner. For instance, in this example, the plurality system will choose A as the winner, even though A is actually ranked last by more than half of the voters. So I would say in this particular example, A won with the plurality system, but that was kind of a bad choice, or it's kind of a bad result in that case. To me, it seems like A should probably not be the winner in a situation like this. Now, this is just a made-up example to make the point that sometimes the plurality winner is maybe not the best choice. Does this actually happen in the real world when people are voting for important things? The answer is yes. So I have a real-world example that I would like to show you in which a similar weird thing happened. This is actually an American political example. So can I just say, often the plurality system doesn't do very well choosing the winner. All right. There are some cases where there are good reasons to say, even though somebody is the winner with the plurality, maybe they shouldn't be the winner overall. Like this example with the A getting the 14 votes. All right. Here's a real world example where something like that really happened. Now, I'm going to talk about an actual American presidential election. I will say again, I'm not trying to share with you my own political hot takes about somebody shouldn't have won that election or whatever. I am interested, for the purpose of our class, only in the mathematics. I'm not trying to get my hot politics. I'm not trying to indoctrinate you all with my hot politics. I am indoctrinating you with my hot mathematics, but not my hot politics. If you want to know my political opinions, I'm happy to share them. Not in this venue. All right. This happened in the famous year 2000 U.S. presidential election. Perhaps you've heard about this. The candidates for president, I remember this. I was alive when this happened. The candidates were George W. Bush in his first presidential election versus Al Gore. Bush versus Gore. And does anyone know who won this election?
Bush won the Electoral College, but I believe Al Gore won the majority?
Yeah, Al Gore actually did win the popular vote. I don't think he got a majority of the popular vote, but he won more than Bush did. Yeah, but Bush won the Electoral College, which made Bush the winner of the election, which is why you've heard of Bush much more than you've heard of Gore. Al Gore was the vice president for Bill Clinton, and he mostly turned into sort of an environmental activist after he lost this election. But anyway, this was the election between Bush and Gore. And the way that this election happened, it was, I suppose, kind of like the Trump and Biden election in that it was not immediately clear who the winner was after the election happened because the votes were just too close to call at first. There were several recounts that were necessary. And mostly, all the issue in this election was in the state of Florida. So the votes in the state of Florida were too close to call on the day, on the night of the election. As you may know, the President of the United States is not actually elected based on the just how many people voted for them. The President of the United States is elected based on the Electoral College, which is a mathematically weird system whereby you don't win the election by getting the most votes. You win a certain number of points from each state by getting the most votes in each state. And the way it happened in this particular example was that the votes in Florida were too close to call. Often this happens, but you can still tell who's going to win by looking at all the other states. But in this example, all of the other states were more or less tied with the electoral votes. And so it was important to see who was going to win in Florida to determine who would win the presidency.
Don't electoral college votes get determined by plurality votes, though?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, state by state, the electoral college votes in most states are determined by plurality, although some states split the electoral votes in weird ways. We're going to talk more about the electoral college later on.
There's like a movie about this.
There's a movie.
Yeah, I watched it.
What is it?
I forget what it's called.
Is it Spike Lee made a documentary about it called "We Was Robbed." He did not like that Bush won the election. This is probably not what you think of.
Election of 2000. I don't know, but I watched it.
All right, nice.
Recommend.
Okay, good. Yeah, it was a really crazy situation. Anyway, I'm trying to tell you, the votes from the rest of the country were all counted, and it was more or less a tie. And so it was necessary to be sure about who won in the state of Florida, but the votes in Florida were too close to call. And let me tell you, there was Bush versus Gore, but there was actually another candidate on the ballot, and this is always how it is in our elections. We have the two major candidates, the Democrats and the Republicans. But then there's other kind of people you never heard of who will be on the ballot that almost nobody votes for these other people. But they're on the ballot all the same. Now, almost nobody votes for them, but some people do vote for those other people. And it mattered in this election. So it was Bush versus Gore versus Nader, this other guy, Ralph Nader, who is not, maybe this is the thing that he's the most famous for, although he has had some other important accomplishments. Ralph Nader was one of the people who pushed through the original laws requiring cars to have seatbelts, which is kind of important in my opinion. So Nader actually has some real accomplishments, but this is probably what he's best known for, is his role in this election. Nader was a third-party candidate. He was running under the Green Party, not a Republican or a Democrat. Anyway, the votes in Florida, can I just tell you the final vote numbers? This is in Florida, all right, because that's the only numbers that ended up mattering in the end. They were Bush gets 2,912,790. These are like the official numbers if you look them up, on Wikipedia or whatever. These are the numbers that they ended up with by the end. It took them several weeks to count all the votes. All right, those were the votes for Bush. The votes for Gore was, this is ridiculous that it was this close, 2,912,253. All right, so that's the difference between the two. Very, very small difference between the two. And then Nader received 97,421. All right, so the margin of victory that Bush had above Gore is something like 500 votes, which is far less than all the people who voted for Nader, all right? Something that makes this even more interesting is if you think about the political parties in America, the parties that really matter are the Republicans and the Democrats. And from a very kind of simplistic view of American politics, the Republicans are the conservatives and the Democrats are the liberals. And they kind of talk about themselves as if they're on sort of a spectrum here. There's the conservative. Well, I should put the conservative on the right just because that's how we do it. And then the liberals, or the left, the radical left, as the Trump kids would say. All right? And the Democrats are the liberals. The Republicans are the conservatives. So this is where Bush, right? The Democrats are the liberals. This is Gore. According to this vague description of American politics, Nader and the Green Party are ultra-liberal. They are, like, generally speaking, regarded as more liberal than the Democrats. So they're, like, over here. All right? This is interesting. Anybody feel interested by this? Why is it interesting that this is where the candidates are situated, based on the numbers that they ended up getting? Yeah.
Because even though technically Bush has the plurality majority, both Gore and Nader together have he won the plurality vote, but he was but he did not win the majority. Yes.
That's true. He didn't win the majority. I think something in there of what you were saying was, if you consider Nader and Gore together, it's much more than what Bush got, all right? And given the fact that Nader is an outlier on this side, it means all of these people who voted for Nader, they probably really hated Bush, right? But the fact that they voted for Nader rather than Gore is what made Bush end up winning the election, all right? This is not my political hot take. Look this up. Anybody will agree with what I'm saying here. I'm not saying anything controversial, all right? So I'm going to say it's can I say it's accurate to assume, sorry, that thing keeps popping up, I don't know why. The Nader voters, maybe it's because of that. Sorry, I'm going to just dump that up here. The Nader voters really hated Bush, all right? But it's because they voted for Nader. If they had been giving the decision between Bush and Gore, probably the Nader voters would have preferred Gore rather than Bush. But they decided to vote for Nader anyway, which had the effect of making Gore lose and making Bush win, all right? Which is the opposite from their true opinions, all right? I would like to try to analyze this in the same way that we have been talking about these other elections in terms of preferences. Now, in the state of Florida, when you vote for the president, they don't ask you for your preferences in a list. They just ask you who you're going to vote for. You like, Trump or Biden or whatever, or some other people on the ballot. If they had ranked their choices, now this is to some extent an extrapolation. We're making some assumptions here. If they had ranked their choices, of course they didn't rank their choices in real life, so we can't say exactly what they would have said, but we can imagine. And again, what I'm saying here, nobody really seriously would debate. If they had ranked their choices, I'm gonna make one of these charts here that I have before, where I have certain people. For example, what about the Bush people? Let's say 2.9 million. I'm just going to write it in terms of millions, rounding off here. 2.9 million people put Bush on top. We know that because they voted for Bush. But if I ask you, how do you think they would have ranked the other candidates? They like Bush the best, but what about the other two? Would they have said your choices are Bush and then Gore and then Nader, or possibly Bush and then Nader and then Gore? What do you think? Anybody else? What do you think?
First, what was the name of the other one?
Bush and Gore and Nader.
Gore?
Yeah, these people who voted for Bush, they would probably put Gore next, followed by Nader, because Gore is like the ordinary Democrat and Nader is like the super liberal. So the Bush voters, who are conservative Republicans, love their guns and their pro-lifes, they would put Bush on the top and then Gore and then Nader. All right, Nader loves seatbelts and trees or something. They're really into environmentalism. Okay, these are the Bush voters. What about the Gore voters? Now, the people who originally put Gore on top. Actually, this is not really possible to know. Presumably, if these candidates exist in a spectrum like this, where Gore is kind of in the middle. Now, an individual person who voted for Gore as their favorite choice, would they actually have liked Nader better than Bush, or would they have actually liked Bush better than Nader? Actually, that's not really possible to say. You could split it 50-50 or something. But I'm gonna just be bold here, and let's imagine that they said Gore and then Bush and then Nader. What I'm trying to do here, this right here, is really a big kind of leap of an assumption, but here I'm being generous to Bush. right? I'm saying, let's just imagine that all the Gore voters actually thought Bush was the second best. This is almost certainly not true, but I'm trying to be as generous as possible to our dear President George W. Bush. All right, and then the Nader voters. There were, if I'm writing things in terms of millions, if I were to just round this up to 100,000, that's 0.1 million. Nader on top. What would these people have said in their second position? Yeah, probably Gore, because they're far left. They do not like the far right Bush. Bush was not especially far right by today's standards, but they would have said something like that, right? Nader, and then Bush, and then Gore. Okay? This is what they would have said if they had ranked their choices. All right? And what I want to tell you is, okay, who won this election? Using the plurality system, Bush won the election because he did technically have slightly more votes than Gore and a lot more than Nader. So using plurality, Bush wins. All right. But if you look at the chart here, this is another one of those scenarios where it seems like, did I write this wrong? Sorry, I said a bunch of, I think I said it right. This I wrote wrong. This should say Nader, Gore, Bush, right? I'm sorry about that. The people who like Nader the best, they don't like Bush at all, right? Because he's the conservative. He's opposite of them. It should have said that. Sorry for my typo. All right, using plurality, Bush is the winner. But if you compare them in terms of the pairs of voters, you can see actually if we consider only Bush versus Gore, like if you look at that chart but ignore the Naders, then you can see actually a majority of the voters like Bush, like Gore better, right? These people are the only ones who like Bush better. That's 2.9 million. All of these people like Gore better than Bush. That's a total of 3 million, all right? So if we consider only Bush versus Gore, Gore is preferred by 3 million people, and Bush is preferred by only 2.9 million, all right? This, I would say, not trying to get my political takes in, I would say the plurality system failed to elect the person that the people actually preferred, all right? The person who won, Bush, was not preferred by most of the voters. Most of the voters in this election would have rather Gore won, but instead Bush won just because of the plurality system. Yeah?
Aren't there states that do rank voting now?
Yeah, right. So since this election, I mean, it's not really new since this election, but there are other states, there are many states, not including Florida, that have started to consider not using the plurality system anymore. And it's because of scenarios like this, where the plurality system seems to have made the bad choice. In this case, the plurality system was favorable to the Republicans. There have been other elections where the plurality system seemed to favor the Democrats. There's some evidence that the election, Bill Clinton's first election, there's some evidence that Bill Clinton was assisted in winning that election because of the plurality system, just in the same way that Bush got some kind of advantage because of the plurality system in this election. Yeah.
I'm confused though. I mean, it makes sense as an overall concept, but does the absence of a vote attribute to someone? Because if they're not voting for Bush and they're not voting for Gore, how do you automatically assign that?
Yeah, so it's not automatically assigned. And this chart is made up. This is an assumption based, really the important part is right here. These people who voted for Nader, how do we really know what they would have said in the second position? And the answer is we don't. So this is not a sure thing what I'm saying. But based on their political opinions here, Nader is a far left outsider.
Right, so it's an assumption.
Yeah, so it is, and I'm not making this up, it's not my assumption. Everybody more or less agrees that it is a good assumption that people who voted for Nader would have preferred Gore rather than Bush.
What if it was more middling though? How would you have scored it? Like, what if it wasn't such a collapse?
Right. Yeah, I mean, I would say in most elections, you can't really tell how people would have thought because they didn't say so. But in this election, I mean, this really is how it was. And so in this case, we can, I think, guess with fairly good confidence how people really would have felt about this. All right? Anyway, I'm just trying to say that the plurality system sometimes does weird things, and it's not only in abstract, like made-up examples on the paper, but this actually happens in the real world sometimes, that the plurality system chooses a winner who, for some reasons, you might be able to argue is not really the appropriate winner. All right? Thank you for the questions. Any more questions about this? Great. All right. So, what else are we going to do? There, like he said over there, there are some places in the world and some states in the United States where they have decided to move away from using the plurality system to avoid situations like this, where the plurality system seems to choose wrong winners. And I want to talk about another system. Another system that sort of is trying to do better than plurality. I don't want this. It is called, this actually, I don't like the name of this, but this is what everybody calls it. Ranked choice voting. And this is kind of a political hot topic these days. If you follow presidential politics especially, you may have heard about ranked choice voting. This is, they say RCV in the media when they talk about this. They often call it that, RCV. This also has some other names, also known as, this is done in many other countries around the world, and elsewhere they call it other things. So sometimes this is called instant runoff voting, which I actually prefer this, that name for it. I'll say why this is, in some places, it's called the transferable vote, which also, I kind of like the sound of that. All right. This is ranked choice voting, also called the instant runoff system. It's used in I don't know how to get rid of that. I got to do some research. It's used in Australia for their elections. They use the ranked choice voting to decide. It's also used in Ireland. They've been using this for a while. For the Congress, the U.S. Congress, in the great state of Maine and Alaska. Alaska just switched to ranked choice voting like last year. The Congress elections we had last year were the first ones done by ranked choice voting in the state of Alaska. Maine has been doing it for a little bit longer than that. And also used locally in several states. I believe that the state of New York now uses ranked choice to elect people like mayors and city council people. Those elections are now done using the ranked choice voting rather than the plurality system. These have been changed to ranked choice because a lot of people don't like the plurality system. And we'll try and talk about, why people don't like the plurality system is basically because stuff like this can happen, which seems wrong. A lot of people think that ranked choice is a better system to use. Let's talk about how you do it. It's fairly easy to do, although much harder than the plurality system. I would say doing the plurality system, like figuring out who the winner is very, very easy. The ranked choice is not really hard, but it is more complicated. How we do it, I'll sort of say in words. You do the election kind of in rounds. And I don't mean you actually ask the people to go back and vote again in a second round. All of the rounds happen kind of mathematically speaking. Everybody just votes once, but then you figure out who the winner is in rounds, and in each round you eliminate one of the candidates. So each time you eliminate the one with the fewest votes. I don't want to say votes here. Can I say the fewest first place? No. It's because I copied something at the beginning of class, and now every time I tap, it wants me to paste it. And I don't know how to copy nothing, so it doesn't do that. Anyway, each time you eliminate the candidate with the fewest first place rankings, and then you recalculate the votes, and you go to the next round, and then you eliminate somebody else, and you keep on doing this until there's only one person left, and that's the winner. All right. This is how you do the ranked choice voting, also known as the instant runoff. I got an example just to try it out. So how about this is kind of a big example here. I have A, B, C's, and D's here. Let's say 38 voters like A, B, C, D, 15 voters like B, C, A, D, 15 say B, C, D, no, A, like that. Let's say 7 people say D, C, B, A. 10 people say C, B, A, D. And 15 people say C, B, D, A. All right. Let's imagine this is what all the votes are. How do we find the winner using the ranked choice? First of all, the winner using, can anybody just shout it out? Who's the winner using plurality here?
B and C.
I think it's A.
Oh.
Plurality, remember, is who got the most votes in the first position. A here got 38, B got 30, that would be 15 and 15. D got only 7, and C got 25. So A is the winner using plurality. That's easy enough. What about the ranked choice? I mean, maybe A is going to be the winner with the ranked choice also. I don't know. Here's how we do it. We sort of do this in rounds, right? Round 1, you count up the first place positions. You actually do what I just did. So A is in top position 38 times. B is in the top position 30 times. C is 25. And D is 7. I am counting only the first position. Oh no.
Oh no. Is it okay?
It's okay. I think it's going to come back. Sorry, there's a button. This is a horrible design. There's a button under the desk right here that if I hit it with my knee, it turns everything off and back on again.
Could you imagine, like, if you're by
it's
the
this.
sink and that's where the garbage disposal button is?
Mm-hmm. I would have no legs. Sorry about this. Okay. Just one moment. I'm back. All right. This was round 1. We count the first position votes, and like I said, the person with the least number of first position rankings is eliminated. What? Over there. D is eliminated. All right? So in the first round, D is eliminated. And then we go back and count it up again. Now, aren't you just going to get the same thing again if you count it up again? Not quite, because we removed D from the election entirely, which means these people who in the first round were counted as D on top, next round, the D gets thrown away, these guys get bumped up, and now these people, their votes count for C instead. This is why the system is sometimes called the transferable vote system, which I kind of like that, because if your top guy loses in an early round, they get thrown out, and your second place choice automatically gets your votes. It makes some amount of good sense, in my opinion. I would like to put my favorite person on top, but if they don't win, then my next person gets my top votes. It makes a lot of sense. Anyway, so for round 2, we eliminate D. And now, in round 2, you might be able to do this in your head, but just for the sake of of making everything as clear as possible, really what you have to do is redraw the chart here without any D's. I am recalculating the entire election as if there were no D's at all. So I am going to draw this chart again, but I'm not going to put the D's anywhere. So the first column used to say A, B, C, D. Now it's just A, B, C because D has been eliminated. If you like on your paper, you could just sort of like X out the D's. That will mostly work, although it gets confusing a little bit. The next column used to say B, C, A, D. Now it just says B, C, A. The next column used to say B, C, D, A. It now says B, C, A. So this column used to say B, C, D, A. I have eliminated the D, and the A moves up to fill in the spot that the D used to be in. All right, next column was the 7. It used to have D on top. The D is eliminated, and everybody else shuffles up by one position. It's CBA. The next column is 10. It used to say CBAD. Now it just says CBA. And the last column is 15. It used to say CBDA. Now it just says CBA. All right? And these are the votes for round 2. When you do this in the real world, this is all done by a computer. It's a little annoying to do by hand, but the computer can do it just fine. All right? And here, any questions about how I got this chart here? Great. And now we count up the votes again. So A, B, C. Again, we are focusing only on the first position ranking. So A is on top, again, 38 times. B is on top, again, 30 times, right here. But now C gets all of these votes. That's 10 plus 15, which is 25, plus 7, which is 32. And so now the next person to be eliminated is B, all right? In this case, we see that C, in the first round, it looked like B was better than C, but by the time we did the second round, we realized actually, in fact, more people like C better than they like B, and so B is kicked out. In my opinion, this is it's a very sensible way of doing things. Slightly more complicated, but it makes a lot of sense. All right, so that was round 2. We eliminate B. Eliminate B. And then we go finally to our last round. I'm going to try and squeeze this in without scrolling. Round 3. This time I have 38 people said A, C. I'm redrawing this chart, but without any of the B's. All right. The next column, 15. It said BCA, so now it's just CA. The next column, 15. It said BCA. Now it's just CA. The next column is 7, CA. Then 10, CA. Then 15, CA. All right? And in the final round, we're going to find out who actually wins. Now it's just one-on-one, and we just choose who got the most votes. A gets 38, and C gets everything else. Now, I believe I made these numbers to add up to 100, so this number should be 62 if you add it up properly. All right, and so C is the winner. C wins using the ranked choice voting. All right, this is how we do the ranked choice voting. Anybody got questions about that? Yes?
Is there sometimes a limit about how many rounds you do if there's a lot more options, or do you always just go until it's one-on-one and then pick the winner from that?
So there are, when different states do this in real life, they sometimes have special rules. When we're doing this in class, we're always just going to keep on doing all the rounds until you get down to someone at the end. Now, it is a fact that if in any round one of the candidates has an actual majority, then they could never possibly be beaten in the later rounds, and so you can stop at that point, which is that's how they do it in the real world. But I'm not going to pay much attention to that. There is actually one slight technicality rule that does come in importantly at certain times. So there's a technicality about ties. Now, in a real life election, you are not going to get ties for the winner just because there are so many voters. But in the examples that we do in class, sometimes there will be ties. Now, in a ranked choice election, having ties for the winner in one of the rounds actually doesn't matter because from round to round, you don't really care who is the winner. What matters is who is the loser of each round, because that determines who gets eliminated. So the technicality rule is, if in some round there's a tie for last, in each round, the most important thing is who is in the last place, because they're the ones who get eliminated. And the rule is, if there is a tie for last place, which this can happen, the rule for who gets eliminated if there's a tie is you eliminate all of them. Anybody who is tied for last place, they all get eliminated. All are eliminated. I mean all that are tied, not everybody. But all tied people get eliminated. All right. This is a technicality. It usually doesn't come up, but maybe every so often in the examples we do, you'll see a tie. And in that case, you should eliminate everybody who is tied for last. All right. Can we do the ranked choice for this election about the foods? Can you handle it? Can we handle it? We have 7 minutes remaining. I think we can handle that. I'm going to go back to my other page here. No. Yes. All right. This one here. Maybe I'll big it up if I can. Yeah. All right. Let's try to decide this using the ranked choice voting. All right. We got to do the rounds here. Now, in the first round, actually, since we've already done plurality a moment ago, actually the first round is the same as this, right? The plurality system is counting how many people are in the first position just overall. And that's exactly the same thing that you're supposed to do in the first round. I actually don't know how this is going to turn out. I didn't work this out myself. But anyway, can you say, so in round one, I'm just going to sort of copy those results here. Round one, it says C's were 8, the M's were 2, the P's were 7, and the W's were 8. All right? We have a tie for the winner, but that doesn't matter. This is not the technicality rule I was talking about is when it's ties for losers. So who gets eliminated here? The M, the maple syrup. It breaks my heart. The M is eliminated. All right? So now my chart is going to be the same thing. Would you mind if I just copy this and scribble out the M's? Once you know what you're doing, it's not so hard to scribble, scribble, scribble. Oh no, I scribbled W's. Scribble, scribble. No. My money don't scribble, scribble. Remember that guy?
What?
All right, I scribbled out the M's, and now I'm going to count again in the first position. Now, the count is really the same. It's only right here that it matters, all right? Because everywhere else on top is the same as it used to be. One way of thinking about this is these poor folks who voted for M's, those votes are thrown away, and now it's going to count, in this case, those votes are both going to count for C, all right? Because these people's tallies will move up. And so I can say in round 2, I now have C, used to have 8 from before, but now they're getting 2 more from those 2 M's that got pushed up. So now C has 10. M is out, P still has 7, and W still has 8. All right? Because the P voters and the W voters, they didn't pick up any new votes here. Apparently everybody who thought maple syrup was the best thought cheese was the second best. All right. Okay. And so who is eliminated here? The P is eliminated next. All right. P is eliminated. Now the next round, maybe I'm going to actually rewrite it for the next round, just because I don't like scribbling for the whole time. This is round 3. All right. The first column now. So I am writing only between the C's and the W's, right? Ignore all the P's. So the first one says C, come on now, CW, then CW, then 2 CW, then 1 CW, 2 CW, 1 CW. If you don't like rewriting this, you can try to just eyeball this. It's not so hard, but I'm trying to be clear here. I believe I went this far. So next is another 1 CW, another 1, another 1, another 1. 4 more 1s. They all say CW.
Friday's on the CW.
Yes, I remember that too. 4 more. How far did I get? Sorry, this is confusing me. This one is also a C over W. One more. All right, and then the next column, 2 has W above C. It looks to me like the C's are going to win, but the next column has 1 W above C, and then 2 W above C, and then all the rest have W. I don't know. This might be a close one here. I don't know. The 1, the 2, the 3. Sorry, I'm on the very edge here. The 2. All right? So I suppose everything to the left of this point liked C better. Can we count them up? This would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 like C better. And W is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That's a nail biter. But W is the winner. All right? I hope I did that right. This is something you'll realize when you're doing the homeworks. Very easy to mess it up in the middle, and unfortunately, if you screw it up at the beginning, you might screw the whole thing. That's a shame. Anyway, W wins with the ranked choice voting. All right. I think maybe that'll do us for today. Check your emails. I'm going to be letting you know when the first homework assignment is posted sometime this afternoon or evening.
When will it be due?
It's